or just regular Thunderous. Actually, I'm not sure his is the Assault Vest variant.
Well, time to get into this match because I cannot wait to see what these players do. Daniel is going to start with that Thunderous, as well as that Mienshao, Reggie, Alecki, and Lapras coming out on Alex's side here.
Mienshao is always a really fun Pokemon because it's one of the faster fake out users in the format. You don't see it very often, and it also gets access to wide cards. So, I mean, this is tricky. I don't think you'd want to Electro Web anyway because you really don't want to activate a Defiant on the opposing side. But Mienshao plus Thunderous definitely applying some early pressure. I think the Calyrex in the back also definitely helps out for the late game. And what Alex really wants to do in these first couple of turns, once again, is basically just weather the storm. Get Daniel to basically pick up 3 KOs in 3 turns with max. Lapras, certainly a good start. One thing you might want to watch out for here is like a Max Knuckle into close combat into the Lapras slot. Mienshao might just be content to fake out as Thunderous goes for like a Max Lightning or a Max Airstream, for example, into Lapras. But I like this lead a lot from Alex's end. I actually think the Alecki is really smart because even after a speed boost from Thunderous, you could still outspeed both of the Pokemon on the opposing side.
Daniel going ahead, putting that early pressure on with this Max Thunderous. I mean, hyper offensive, you're gonna go fast, you're gonna go hard, and try and take some early leads here. So this Lapras, as we saw in the menu, is going to be opting for that Protect here. The Mienshao will fake out, instead opting to fake out into the Regieleki. That was a good amount of damage for the Regieleki, and the Airstream is going to hit into it as well, bringing it real close down to the red. Getting a speed boost on Daniel's side as well, but not picking up this KO.
Wow, that was actually a really cool play from both ends. I mean, Alex, trying to stall out the Dynamax by protecting the Lapras, and Daniel actually one step ahead, ends up just doubling up onto the Regieleki. Now, doesn't pick up a KO, so curious how both of the Pokemon are trained here. For example, if Regieleki is still faster, he can get one attack off before fainting. Alex has already stalled out one turn of Dynamax, and that's really essential from Daniel's side of the field because this Thunderous is just so much stronger while Dynamax. I like the Protect option. Daniel making an impressive play, reading into that potential Protect and just ignoring Lapras completely. I think there, Daniel saying, okay, even if Lapras maxes, maybe you get a Resonance off, but you're not going to KO either of my Pokemon. Actually, Alecki is more annoying anyway, so it's not necessarily like a hard prediction, but ends up looking even better because the Lapras protected.
Alex is going to be maxing this Lapras here, looking to go for that G-Max Resonance and get that Aurora Veil set up. I'm excited to see what Daniel does here and see how these Pokemon are trained, see who's going to be going first. It will be that Regieleki with that Thunder Wave, though, hitting it into the Mienshao, which is definitely going to be annoying for Daniel here.
Yeah, Thunder Wave coming out, still outspeeding, so you don't see that very often on Regieleki, but it's a really cool option to just get some speed control that players often don't expect because, Thunder Wave halves your speed rather than something like Electro Web, which only brings you down by 1 stage. And so that's honestly really essential, right? But close combat still goes out into Lapras, and look how much damage that does before you get a Resonance off, over 50%.
It's a huge hit into this Lapras. I mean, the Resonance here will get a nice little chunk of damage off onto the Thunderous, but I mean, critical hit here, but that Lapras is hurting after that close combat here.
Yeah, I'm really curious. I thought one option Daniel could have opted for was actually Max Knuckle into close combat. That gets you a little bit more chip damage onto Lapras, and then Mienshao's at +1 attack, and if you could just knock out Lapras outright there before it gets to attack, that'd be really incredible. Alex has already stalled out 2 turns of the max from Daniel's end. There's 1 more turn to stall out here, and you've dropped Mienshao's speed, which is, that Thunder Wave is actually really, really clutch, honestly, because it means even if Thunderous goes for another Max Airstream, the Zacian will still outspeed the Mienshao. So right now, that Thunderous does have that speed boost, can go for something like another Max Airstream. You can Max Airstream close combat. One of the questions I have to ask, though, is how do you actually deal with the Zacian with the Light Screen and the Reflect Up and with Light Clay, right? Because it's going to be bulky. It's going to be tough to deal with in this end game. And I thought Daniel's best answer into Zacian was probably Cinderace. I'm curious if he actually brought that regular Cinderace in the back. Calyrex is still not bad as an option, but it's really going to be able to pick up a KO.
So Max Lightning from the Thunderous coming out onto the Zacian, only dealing about a third of its damage here. Will set that Electric Terrain, though. And here we are, the Zacian hitting that Behemoth Blade. Let's see how much damage this does here. And looks like it just is gonna pick up this KO.
Yeah, with that, double damage because of the Dynamax, setting that Thunderous up for a KO immediately, which is quite nice for sure. Once again, you have this late game screens, and
that Lapras just holding on with that 3 HP left. The Aurora Veil coming in clutch. Lapras able to fire off a Max Geyser into this Mienshao. Of course, it is going to hold on because of the Focus Sash, but that was a that was a really big live from this Lapras here.
Yeah, it was absolutely huge, especially if Daniel actually brought that Cinderace in the back. You set up the Rain now, so Cinderace's Power Ball I don't think would be able to knock out Zacian, especially with Rain and the Reflect being up. So such a critical survival there. I mean, you can see how defensive Alex's team can be, right? Especially when you get that resonance off, and that's the upside of using something like Lapras. It's part of the reason why I was, intrigued by the fact, like, maybe Daniel can double up onto the Lapras and just pick up a KO onto it before he even gets that resonance off, because Mienshao plus the Thunderous was a really good option, but Daniel instead decided to split the attacks, knock out the Regieleki, and the Lapras has really been paying dividends with that resonance and now surviving, getting that Max Geyser off as well. It is going to be Calyrex Shadow Rider coming in, but, Mienshao is paralyzed right now. There is still a turn of Max here. My only question is, can the Zacian one-shot into the Calyrex? The Incineroar in the back definitely going to be useful for this endgame. So, looks like Alex is just considering the Behemoth Blade here. You have to be a little bit concerned about maybe a double up onto Zacian, but you could just Behemoth Blade the Calyrex and then target Mienshao with the Lapras, I guess. I think, that feels like a decent option here. So, looks like he's going to Max Guard instead.
Alex locking in at the very last second here, going for the Max Guard. The Calyrex as well, opting to just go for that Protect here. So both players playing it a little bit safe here. Zacian, of course, hitting into that, or trying to hit into that Calyrex, is going to be met with that Protect. Mienshao being able to fire off a close combat back into that Zacian, dealing a nice amount of damage here, considering it's through an Aurora Veil.
Yeah, that's actually a really nice play from Daniel's end. Doesn't end up taking any damage and gets a ton of damage onto the Zacian. Zacian really feels like the win condition from Alex's side right now, so you're really just aiming to pick up a KO onto that. Lapras is so low in terms of HP, it's just one hit away from getting knocked out. So, my question here now is, how is this Calyrex trained? Is there a chance it can survive a +1 Behemoth Blade? If, you're worried about it KOing, Daniel can always switch out the Calyrex, right, and go for, like, another close combat onto the Zacian slot. So, it's also scary because Daniel's Mienshao is paralyzed. A single paralysis could obviously be super, super detrimental right now. But I like the decision to bring it in Incineroar and Protect here, so you can go for a Fake Out the subsequent turn.
Mm-hmm. Of course, having that Fake Out pressure on the board is really strong here. The Zacian is going to go for the Protect here, and Calyrex just going to go for the Astral Barrage here, which, see how much damage this does into the Incineroar. Barely any. And Mienshao able to hit the close combat, but unfortunately is going into the Zacian here. What a good Protect, and this is really fun watching how this is shaking out between these two players right now.
Yeah, and you can see, like, Alex really wants to conserve this Zacian, right? Because Astral Barrage is so strong from that Calyrex right now, so you do have the option to potentially go for a switch here. You could go for the double Protect. Both are certainly options, but an Astral Barrage should just pick up a KO onto that, and I'm still unsure, like, how the Zacian and Calyrexes are trained. Are they both, like, max speed, for example? And if so, basically, who is going to attack first between the two? So, oh, wow, okay, Alex is actually considering the double Protect option. Interesting.
All right, now it's going to be a big question if the Zacian is going to hit it, and it does not. Feeling that double Protect, Incineroar just cleaning up this KO on the Mienshao there with that Fake Out, and Astral Barrage coming out and is going to be cleaning up the KO on that Zacian. That not hitting, the odds aren't that fantastic to hit that double Protect, but I mean, that would have been a really big game changer if Alex was able to hit that here.
I think what makes this so hard, Sierra, is the fact that Incineroar does not have a dark type offensive attack. There's no Snarl, there's no Darkest Lariat, so you actually can't hit the Calyrex for much damage. It actually drastically changes how this matchup should be approached because and there's Entity in the back, so yeah, I think the Calyrex can really clean up this game right now because Incineroar just can't do any damage. So Alex was in a tricky spot where he never lowered the Calyrex's speed. Presumably the Calyrex is just max speed here, so it can just outspeed everything on Alex's end. Didn't get something like a Thunder Wave or an Electro Web off against the Calyrex. And then because this Incineroar has that taunt rather than like a offensive dark type attack, it actually can't hit the Calyrex for damage. And with the rain being up, Flare Blitz is your best offensive option. So I think right now, Daniel should actually take this first game. You can just go for something like a Follow Me with that Entity, keep spamming Astral Barrage. Sure, Incineroar resists it, but doesn't matter because the Entity is redirecting any potential damage away from the Incineroar. So no dark type attack here really, really punishes Alex in the end.
Sure enough, that Follow Me is going to come out here from Daniel's side. Calyrex with another Astral Barrage. I mean, it's not doing too much to this Incineroar, like you said, but if the Incineroar can't do anything back, then all Daniel needs to do is keep chipping away at it, and eventually it will just go down here. So Incineroar hitting that taunt into the DD, so we won't see any more Follow Me's coming out from it, but still not a fantastic position here.
I do think that was by far Alex's best play. Basically what you're hoping for here is, hey, now I've taunted your Entity, timed it perfectly with the rain as well, so you can't go for Follow Me. Entity typically is not really going to have anything offensive other than an Expanding Force, so the hope here is Incineroar can survive and then launch a Flare Blitz and maybe crit to KO the Calyrex. The problem there is that you probably take so much recoil anyway, but Entity is not going to win this game offensively in this endgame, so what you need to do is basically hope to KO the Calyrex and then Incin can maybe win against Entity. Question is whether it can really do enough damage through recoil. I think Lapras here, can definitely opt for double protect. But Calyrex actually going for the protect, which I actually like a lot. It just bypasses, takes a turn of the taunt away, and then Expanding Force into Lapras really safe here. Lapras doesn't opt for a double, so that's a KO. And Daniel reading into Alex's win condition really smartly there.
Yeah, this is Incineroar, of course, not able to hit the Flare Blitz this turn, and if it was a question about whether it was going to be taking too much recoil this turn, I mean, next turn, it is definitely going to be taking too much recoil here. The Calyrex will have the opportunity to hit Astral Barrage into the Incineroar first, and I mean, this is looking like a pretty done game here, minus any shenanigans.
Yeah, we'll see. If Calyrex actually can't get the one-hit KO onto Incineroar, Incineroar hangs on, gets Flare Blitz in return. It's just so tough because essentially Incineroar only has Flare Blitz for damage right now, which means you need to Flare Blitz both Calyrex and Entity and do the amount of damage that they have in terms of HP right now. And all of that, I feel like it's just enough for you to faint from recoil when you're adding Calyrex's damage output from this turn alone on top. So that was a nice protect last turn to make sure that, no crazy shenanigans happen, but opting for the double. Oh, very interesting.
Let's see how that shakes out here. Flare Blitz is going to hit into it, dealing a lot of damage, but also doing a lot of recoil damage back. Maybe waiting to try and for that Aurora Veil to just get the KO, but probably not going to make a difference anyways, realistically here, but we'll find out. We saw Alex as well, flirting with that quick button a little bit, recognizing that this game is almost pretty sealed, but looks like he's going to play it out just to see what happens here.
Yeah, I was thinking with the double, is there any way that Alex can win? I mean, if you crit the Flare Blitz into Calyrex and then crit another Flare Blitz into Entity, I just thought there was no reason to go for a double. It's better to just go for guaranteed damage with something like Astral Barrage. I'm wondering if maybe Daniel timed out there. In the end, I think it probably doesn't make a difference anyway. Like, Daniel probably had that end game just because, there's really no way Incineroar, especially without a recovery berry, can actually heal enough to, win that in the end. But, those end game scenarios can always be tight, and it's hard to, each turn really matters. You just, especially when you have a win in hand, you just want to ensure that you have it. So I think in the end, it didn't really matter what Daniel went for. I think he had that game locked up anyway. So regardless, I mean, I think the idea behind the double was maybe to try to stall out the you know, the taunt on Indy, and then you can follow me the next turn. But Astral Barrage, I think, would have been totally fine there either way. But the main thing there was that, yeah, there's no way to actually deal with that Calyrex Shadow Rider in that late game, right? There's no Dark type attack on Incineroar, so I think Alex has to go back to the drawing board. He's got to figure out a better way to deal with Calyrex Shadow Rider in the late game, not just the Dynamax that we were initially talking about that would come out from Daniel's side in the early game.
Yeah, we were talking about earlier as well how a lot of Incineroars are running taunt, and we've seen time and time again throughout the tournament how useful it's been, but this end game scenario really showing what you're missing out on with that Incineroar, because the Incineroar with a Dark type move could have done something there, but unfortunately with that Flare Blitz and the recoil damage was just unable to do anything in this scenario. So with that being said, let's get into this game to see what adjustments can be made to try and tie this series up. So the Mienshao and the Thundurus are going to make a reappearance on Daniel's side, with Alex starting with that Lapras and that Amoonguss this time around.
So I was going to say, I would have liked to see Alex maybe bring that Thundurus. Perhaps he has it in the back, still not 100% sure on what he's locked in here, because I actually thought Dynamax Thundurus could be the right approach here, where you give it a couple of speed boosts in the early game, and then ideally, I don't think we've actually seen Alex really play towards his Thundurus too much, but if it has any, you know, strong Dark type attacks, that could be an answer to deal with the Calyrex, for example, and a lot of players do offer Dark type attacks specifically for Calyrex Shadow Rider these days. So Alex switching up things a little bit, bringing out that Amoonguss this time around. That can obviously put on Rage Powder support, which is definitely helpful. This is still scary though, right? Once again, there's still so much offense in this early game. You have to weather the storm of the Thundurus with these max airstreams, and then there's still going to be that Calyrex Shadow Rider in the back from Daniel's side.
And Daniel, with that max Thundurus, making another appearance here. I mean, it worked last time, getting that early offensive pressure out, so be interesting to see where this is targeting into, whether it's going to be just getting that speed control right away with that Amoonguss, or potentially a lightning to prevent score onto the opposing Pokemon, though that's not going to help the Thundurus in this case. And then Lapras, G-Max making an appearance as well, so it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out here.
Yeah, let's see. I definitely like the adjustment, because I think from Alex's end, you need to conserve that Regieleki to get an Electro Web off, or just Thunderbolt into Calyrex Shadow Rider in the late game, right? So losing it in the early game definitely does not help. And it's actually no fake out here from the Mienshao. It's just going to be a max airstream into Amoonguss, but not sure you can actually KO the Amoonguss with the double up here. Curious if Mienshao has any other way to deal with Amoonguss here this first turn.
That max airstreaming did do a lot of damage though through the Koga Berry, bringing it down to just a little less than half of its HP. The Mienshao opting to actually just go for the taunt instead. So Daniel doesn't even need to pick up this KO this turn on the Amoonguss. It's still not really going to be doing too much. This Resonance going to be hitting into the Mienshao, setting up the Aurora Veil, but of course Focus Sash coming in, so this Pokemon gets to stick around for one more turn.
Yeah, and Taunt really, we've seen how common it is as a move here. Mienshao running a perfect taunt to deny the Spore from Amoonguss. I think the one really bad thing that could have happened for Daniel is if Spore goes off into the Thundurus there, right? And then you just don't have 2 turns of Dynamax to play with, but it's a really nice taunt from Mienshao. It's an open team sheet tournament, so, I think Alex knew that the taunt was potentially there from the Mienshao, but just going for it anyway, saying, hey, maybe Daniel expects me to not go for Spore, because who would Spore, right? When I know they have taunt. So kind of those mind games adding up. Goes for the play, doesn't get it though, and now he's in a really tricky spot where Amoonguss can easily get doubled up into. For example, you can max Airstream and close combat into that slot. That's guaranteed damage. It would guarantee KO Amoonguss, and it would do a lot of damage to anything that could switch in as well.
So this Zacian coming in for the Amoonguss. So it's all going to come down to where Daniel decides to target into this turn. Max Airstream coming out again is going to hit into that Zacian, dealing a little chunk of damage here. And now it comes down to where this Mienshao is going to be targeting. So it is going to be going super fast with 2 speed boosts now. The close combat though instead hitting into the Lapras here. So that could have been devastating if that was hit into the Zacian, but the G-Max Resonance is going to make another appearance, dealing a nice amount of damage onto this Max Thundurus on Daniel's side.
Yeah, and I like Daniel's decision there to just split the damage. One thing that's important to note as an endgame scenario for Daniel is basically spamming Calyrex Shadow Rider and just going for Astral Barrages across the board, right? And so, you know, could have doubled up on Zacian, but I think content with the way the turn played out because you get solid damage onto Lapras. And this Mienshao is actually putting in so much work. Lapras is one of the bulkiest Pokemon really that you can go up against, especially when it gets the Resonance off. But this Mienshao plus Thunderous lead I think is really effective in dealing with the Lapras even when Resonance is up. And you can see how bulky the Thunderous from Daniel's side is, right? 2 max Resonances isn't even a guaranteed KO onto it. So part of the issue here is that Alex has kind of split the damage, and so Daniel is able to still do so much just with these 2 Pokemon. And we know there's going to be that Calyrex Shadow Rider in the back, and that is going to be tough to deal with in this late game too.
That Thunderous going for the Max Knuckle onto the Zacian here, getting a nice little attack boost on each of his Pokemon, and that close combat coming out into the Lapras. So much damage with that attack boost, but not doing enough yet again with that Aurora Veil up. The Zacian hitting a Behemoth Blade now is going to be targeting into that Thunderous and does pick up the KO here.
So the question now is, you know, Daniel is going to get some free switch-ins. We know there's that Calyrex in the back. Calyrex plus ADD in general just looks really scary because you can just go for consistent follow me plus Astral Barrage. The Amoonguss is, you know, pretty low, although I guess it'll heal back a fair amount after Regenerator. Zacian's also somewhat low as well. I mean, Lapras is super low. So the thing is with Calyrex Shadow Rider, you also don't want to snowball it at all, right? Don't give it a single special attack boost because even if after a single special attack boost, it just puts in so much work. So, you know, Alex definitely has the numbers advantage right now, but Daniel now has this beast, which is Calyrex Shadow Rider. This won him the end game in the last game. And my question still is, how is Alex going to deal with it here? I think the answer is to ideally get Regieleki in safely, get an Electro Web off, and then use Zacian. But the problem is that the Entity also offers redirection support. So even if you Electro Web and the Calyrex is attacking second, it doesn't matter if you can't actually get a, you know, damage or one-hit KO move onto it. And so right now, the thing for Daniel's side is you can just go for that Astral Barrage. Entity can go for a Follow Me, can go for a Protect. I mean, Alex's main win condition is to knock out Calyrex, and Daniel's win condition is to make sure Calyrex does not get knocked out, protect it as much as possible.
So it's going to be really interesting to see what plays out here. The Lapras so close to being KO'd, but would offer that free switch into that, like that safe switch that you were talking about, into that Regieleki if it does happen to be going down here. Alex looking at the possibility of perhaps protecting that Zacian, recognizing the amount of damage it can deal and not wanting to let it take a big hit quite yet here. So Calyrex also opting to go for the Protect here. So both players playing it a little safe, kind of seeing what the other person is going to be doing. And Aditi also with the Protect here. Daniel not risking anything. The Lapras too, all going for the double Protect, failing, but not too much getting accomplished this turn.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, that's actually interesting because of how the mechanics work now. Lapras actually has an opportunity to go for yet another Protect. And so you can see here Alex is considering the switch because, once again, you really don't want Daniel to get a single knockout because if Calyrex gets even a single special attack boost, it's looking really scary in this end game. So opting for that Behemoth Blade target into Calyrex. My question still is whether or not that's enough for a KO onto Calyrex. Often with these Swords Dance Zacian sets, you also, you know, actually don't run that much offensive investment because you want to invest a little bit more in bulk. So I'm curious on how Zacian specifically is trained in this position. But Mungus is going to be coming out. I'm curious if Daniel maybe reads into this and goes for some Psychic type attacks. But there's that Helping Hand. That is a good way to start this turn for Daniel.
Helping Hand instead. This Calyrex is going to be dealing a nice little chunk of damage here.
Oh, that KO Zacian.
Taking out that Zacian. That's a huge KO here, and getting that special attack boost, as you were saying, the Calyrex, especially next to that Indeedee, if you start letting it take KOs, be building up its special attack, I mean, it's just going to be one-shotting everything, and if Alex can't touch it, that's a really dangerous situation to be in here.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't see too much comeback potential now from Alex's side, because Astro Barrage will just get a one-hit KO onto Amoonguss, will one-hit KO into the Lapras. So yeah, I absolutely think you need to protect the Amoonguss here. And then the question is, maybe you just go for a Thunderbolt crit onto Calyrex and hope. The Thunder Wave option is cheeky as well. You know, you can hope for full Paras here, and basically hope that the NDD like doesn't go for a Follow Me in this position, right? But it feels like if you just go for Follow Me plus Astro Barrage, this is a very, very secure victory. I guess the reason Daniel might not want to go for that is in case the Aleki goes for an Electro Web and then Thunderbolt KOs the NDD the next turn, but it's a really critical KO onto Lazashi, and that's why Helping Hand is such a good option on that NDD, despite, you know, the screens being up. It's just impossible to deal with this duo in this endgame.
Alright, NDD is going to click that Follow Me, so this Thunder Wave is going to be hitting into the target Alex doesn't really want here, so this Calyrex will have the opportunity go for an Expanding Force this time, and will connect with this Regieleki, and be dealing all the damage except for one as that Focus Sash comes out. So, I mean, I feel on Alex's side, there's really not much can be done, but that Indeedee is paralyzed, so the little bit of luck going Alex's way, I mean, Alex isn't in the best spot, but there has been games of Pokemon decided on luck before, and sometimes that's kind of what you have to hope for.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing towards his outs, right? Daniel being one step ahead, going for that Follow Me, makes it even harder now. I think Alex basically needs to go for a Thunder Wave onto Calyrex, hope for a para on both the Calyrex and the Indeedee, or you can just hope to crit a Thunderbolt right now onto Calyrex and hope that Indeedee gets full parried as it goes for a Follow Me. Odds are really slim here, but it's better than none. I think I would prefer to just go for the Thunderbolt crit play onto Calyrex, but to be honest, I'm not even sure that's enough to KO. But looks like Alex is going to opt for the first option, which is going for the Thunder Wave. Mungus does not get the double, and Indeedee gets the Follow Me, so that essentially should secure up the game here for Daniel.
Yeah, it wasn't looking too fantastic in Alex's position after that Zacian went down, but of course, at this point, Daniel is up a game. Alex needs to play to whatever outs that he can have, and if that's going for those paralysis, then that's what it is, but both of these Pokemon are going to get KO'd here, and I mean, that's just going to be sealing this up here. I mean, this Lapras has 11 HP. There's nothing that can be done here. This is a done and sealed game, which means Daniel will be advancing in just one more turn.
I think what's really tough here in the end was the lack of good Ghost Resist, right? The best one is Incineroar, but Incineroar does not have a Dark type attack in this scenario. So that was tough. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised Incineroar and Thunderous weren't brought out in this match, because I thought they were maybe like better options. At least Incineroar can resist those Ghost type attacks, and the Thunderous, you know, with that Assault Vest can maybe take the damage a little bit better, but this is why Calyrex Shadow Rider is such an effective form in Series 8. Very few people have good, reliable Ghost Resists, and that's the main problem.
Alright, Alex, just double checking. I mean, you gotta triple check to make sure there's like not much that can be done here. Opting to just go for that Protect, but at this point, I think it is just delaying the inevitable. I mean, this Calyrex is so fast, and I mean, it hits for a lot of damage. It won't even have to in this case, though, so Alex just holding off just to make sure nothing can be done, but I'm pretty sure this game is pretty sealed up here at this point.
Yeah, that's basically it, and this is why Calyrex Shadow Rider can be so threatening. If you don't have a Ghost Resist or a good, say, Dark type attack or Ghost type attack, like part of the thing that makes Calyrex Shadow Rider really volatile is the fact that there are moves that can hit it for a lot of super effective damage, right? 4 times super effective damage from Ghost or Dark, but in the end, Alex actually didn't really have any of those kind of attacks with the Pokemon he brought into this matchup. So really would have loved to see Thunderous or Incineroar make an appearance here in the second game. I think the Amoonguss mix-up is nice, but I don't know, when you know that the Mienshao on the opposing side has Taunt, it feels even riskier.